Let's go.
Let's do it. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Open Source Entrepreneur. I'm Casey Green. This is my esteemed co-host Jimmy Noorlander. Jimmy, it's good to be with you on a Thursday night.
Likewise, do you know, it feels like a long Thursday. That's all I gotta say.
I was telling Natalie the same thing, my sweet wife. I was like, man, today was like a grind. And so, like, I'm really actually excited to be here tonight and have a really fantastic conversation, really built around mental health. And we'll explain all about that in just a second. But Jimmy has some huge news that I made him hang on to until we officially started so it could be on the recording part of the podcast. Jimmy, what's our huge news?
Do you know, we're basically famous and viral. Like we one more subscriber, and we hit not a million, not 2 million, but 100 followers.
100, that's right. We're going to be in triple digits. If you're not following us, please make sure you hit follow. Be that 100th
This
person.
this is where
You
we gotta
get
do this for the
for the what? Oh yeah, to make it do the thing. Why isn't it doing the thing? Now we're gonna look like ridiculous idiots doing this the whole time. But guys, we're almost triple digits. This is huge. But no, we're really excited. We tease. Jimmy knows as well as I do that, especially in today's day and age. Followers, although we appreciate you following us, we want you to follow us because we have a lot of cool guests and a lot of great information about being an entrepreneur. But we are getting way more views than just 100 followers that we have. So we are grateful that what we're doing is being shared with a lot of people, being pushed out to all the social spaces. You can actually find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and what am I missing, Jimmy? Facebook.
yeah.
So like you can find us on any of the major platforms at Open Source Entrepreneur. And we share clips basically every day. And sometimes we put some fun things in there just for fun. But guys, it's going really well. Jimmy and I are having a ton of fun talking to different entrepreneurs and seeing how America is really built on the backs of small businesses and some really cool things. And I've been so amazed at the knowledge and the depth and the breadth of people that we're finding to be on and talk about how they're earning a living and how their side hustles turn from side hustles into their full-time gigs. I mean, we have acrobats like circus people, we have people making soap, we have people making energy bars, pooper scoopers, we have more traditional things like marketers and lawyers, chiropractors. We're all over the board, but they've all have such unique and interesting stories to tell. And really, part of our mission is to say, listen, anybody out there can make a living doing anything. There's not really an excuse for you not to have a really fantastic job that you love doing. There are so many ways to make money and impact in the world. Like, you have to get out and get after it. So,
Okay.
yes, almost to 100 followers. Make it happen, guys. Hopefully, by next week, we're reporting that we're at 100. Fantastic news.
But I mean, let's be honest too. Yeah, 100 is great, but like you said, we're hitting tens of thousands of
Yeah,
views each week. Is that what it is each week, each day?
each week. Yeah, each week.
Which is pretty awesome, considering
So,
two lazy boys sitting there home starting this.
yeah, yeah. So, the next big step for us, 100 followers. After that, millions. No, but listen, guys, we're really excited to talk to you today. Matter of fact, our special guest is the one and only Jimmy Noorlander. And let me explain why. I didn't do a take it or leave it this week because this is a really important topic that I want to cover with you. For those who don't know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we thought there was no better person to talk about mental health than our one and only Jimmy Noorlander. He is owner of Deseret Counseling. He has clinics all up and down the Wasatch Front. You have a variety of therapists working for you. How many in total? Do you know the number? I'm putting you on the spot. Do you know the number?
16, counting me.
16 therapists up and down the Wasatch Front who see tons of patients every single day. My family's benefited greatly from Jimmy and his practice. And I know that a lot of relationships people we're talking to have actually been born out of connections Jimmy's made through Deseret Counseling. And so it's really important. And I love the concept of a mental health awareness month. Um, as we go into this, Jimmy, let me actually start because I did find a quote that out of one of my books I'm reading. As a matter of fact, it's called 13. I'm not getting paid for this, guys. Just a really cool book. 13 things mentally strong people do. Well, it says don't do, but basically it's a book about mental health and 13 kind of principles that you can dive into to be mentally strong, right? It talks about going back, dealing with past traumas, moving forward, and making sure you take advantage of every single day. It's a great read, really great read. But here's a quote. It's from Marianne Williamson, and she says, "We do not heal the past by dwelling there. We heal the past by living fully in the present."
100%.
So I'm excited to kind of open you up on that one, Jimmy, and we'll do it here in just a second. But before we get into that, and before we really get into questions about mental health, about We're going to dive deep. And I did not, this is a fail on my behalf. I really wish I would have put out a video today because people are going to have an opportunity to ask questions. If they have questions about mental health, depression, anxiety, we are inviting people who are going to be live with us to come in and ask those difficult questions. Odds are we may not know you because this is being broadcast out to a lot of people. So it's a safe space. Share your question, and we'll ping Jimmy with it and make sure that we get the answers you're looking for. But here's some staggering statistics that I found about mental health. 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness each year. 1 in 20 U.S. adults experience serious mental illness each year. 1 in 6 U.S. youth have a mental health condition, but only half receive treatment. 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14 and 75% by age 24.
Mm.
That is brutal for me. At age 24, you're barely, I mean, 14 is even worse, but 24, you're barely getting started in life. Barely getting started. You're maybe the first quarter, maybe a little more than quarter way through your life. But you're barely getting started. You're going to suffer with mental illness for the rest of your life if you don't take care of these situations. And last but not least, and this one is heartbreaking. This is from 2023, was the stat I found. It might even be higher now. 20% of all high school students seriously considered suicide. And I
I
think
mean,
that's what we're here to
you
do.
look in our own community. There's been quite a few this past year,
Yeah.
and we're
And
only in May, going into May.
yeah, and that's guys. That's what we have to stop. We have got to stop the epidemic of people not getting help. We have to destigmatize. Oh, you're going to a therapist or mental health. We have to bring awareness. That's what this month is about. And we're gonna have Jimmy dive into all things mental health related. Jimmy, before we do that, will you just let people know your background, how you got started in mental health, the road you've come through, because you've actually gone through other certifications to deal with some serious
Mhm.
traumas as well as general mental health overall. But specifically, you deal with a lot of heavy traumas. Tell people your background, where you came from, and then we'll get started into this conversation so people understand how well qualified you are to be talking about this type of awareness.
Well, yeah. So I grew up in a little small town, Indianola, where there's more cattle than there are people. Closest gas station's 10 miles away. So just had an awesome stay-at-home mom, a dad who owned his own construction business, did a lot of roofing, growing up, cement work. Went on an LDS mission to Romania, came home, went to school. I started school. I wanted to be a pediatrician, so
Okay.
I was taking some anatomy classes and going through that process. I was just sitting in a therapy social work class and just had that gut feeling you got to go change things up, and went and changed it up and started working with juvenile sex offenders. Did that for about 3 years. Worked with gangs and drugs. Then went to corrections. Worked in corrections for about a year and a half for adults. Did hospice, and during that time is when I started my own private practice. I started my own private practice about going on 14 years this year,
Wow.
and done a plethora of training. I'm a certified EMDR therapist, and EMDR is specialized for trauma. I've been trained in ART with it, which is another trauma-based therapy. And then all my conferences I go to are some type of trauma based. So I was in Anaheim for 4 days last year, trauma based therapy. I head to Denver, Colorado. I go to Las Vegas every 2 years for a conference because there's a domestic violence conference. Just kind of get a variety of everything, just so whoever comes into our office or I see them, I have the skills to help them out.
Yeah. So this is something that continuing education is paramount for what you're doing because I would imagine that things are looking drastically different now than they even did 14 years ago with the advent of social media. It's been around for longer than 14, but with the prevalence of social media,
Hmm.
um, you've had to adapt and adjust because I'm sure you're seeing things now that you just didn't see 14 years ago. But you guys can see that over the last 14 years, Jimmy spent honing his craft, going through some of the most difficult, violent trainings, dealing with violent sex offenders, gangs, all the way up to just kind of your day to day. Hey, I need a tune up type situations. And so the breadth is really amazing. And Jimmy, I think when people talk about mental health, frequently we go right to like depression or anxiety. Do you find that mental health expands outside of kind of those two categories?
Oh, for sure. But I think those are the two things that main people come in for depression, anxiety. But then you also, I should say depression, anxiety, a lot of the time leads to different avenues. So it could, whether it be self-cutting, suicidal, um, like drugs addictions. It's usually that negative effect that you're having on yourself, that shame, that guilt, the depression, anxiety, and you feel like you're just not good enough to do anything.
I would anticipate that that's something that a lot of people struggle with is the feeling of not being adequate,
Yes.
not feeling good enough, not feeling like you deserve things, and that they're stuck in a victimhood mentality. Is that accurate? Like, are you seeing a lot of that right now in your practices?
Not necessarily they're stuck in victimhood because they're there for a reason.
Okay.
It's not because they're like, oh, I'm playing the victim, but sometimes it's just things that happen in life that got them there. There are times where, the brain's just like wired a little bit different, so that depression, anxiety comes on. But more often than not, it's something that happened in their life. So when we're born, we're not born, naturally anxious, naturally depressed. It's our steps in life, our life events that get us to where we are today. And yes, there are some that probably played the victimhood, but I'd say most of them is they don't know why, what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, they just notice something is off, right? And
Yes.
they know they need to get some help. What would you say? What are we seeing, or what are you seeing a lot of right now in your practices? What's a common prevalent thing that is coming through the doors that perhaps as parents we can help our children with, or as friends and neighbors that we can help other adults with? What are you seeing come in the doors right now?
So I know with me personally, I see a lot of trauma based, but I guess as a collective, it goes back to that depression, anxiety. We see quite a bit of youth, and college kids. So those stats kind of line right up to where we're at. And believe it or not, I was looking at demographics from last year, a couple months ago. 25 to 35-year-olds are struggling.
Okay.
And a lot of it is they're just stuck. They don't know where to go.
Hmm.
They're beating themselves up. It might be because of financial, it might be because of their marriage, it might be because of their kids. And there's just a variety of things that bring them into the door. And our job is to see what that is and what we can do to help them through it.
Yeah, I am turning 45 here pretty quickly, and I remember back to 35. I know that sounds crazy, but those were some difficult years. I think I know that I felt like I was going to be farther along in my given career than I was. I believe that like my finances were going to look different. I believe a lot of things about myself were going to be different at that point in time. So I definitely resonate with saying, okay, at 35, I thought I was going to be farther along. I thought I'd be making multiple six figures in my job, right? I thought I was going to have massive house and nice cars and all these wonderful things. I've been very blessed, but really, it's when I started to work on myself that things got a little better. I think about that time also, Jimmy. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's uncommon for people at that point in the ballgame to start to. My wife and I have been married for 21 years. Right around when I was 40-ish, so maybe not quite that long ago, like we had some rough spots in our marriage. And I just, people start to become a little complacent and they quit, they forget to like date their spouse and things just begin to kind of happen. The day-to-day life really just grinds on you. What are some ways and what are some tools that you're giving these people who are 25 to 35 was a big demographic for you, but even 40, 45, 50? What are some tools that people can have on a day-to-day to help maintain a sharp mental state, and if they are feeling a little bit of a funk, how do they pull out of that?
So depending on what the funk is, sometimes medication is needed. I'll be honest. If medication is needed, I like to say, okay, why don't you just go to a doctor to first rule out any physical things. Just make sure physically, anatomy, everything's fine. Because sometimes your levels might be off, and that's all there is. Because as we get older, those levels go off. But with the person coming in, with the depression, anxiety is, all right, why are they depressed? Try linking it to what's going on.
Yeah.
And then as they're doing that is letting them be comfortable with their body, letting them be comfortable we said it before on this show, comfortable with being uncomfortable. And okay, let's work through those emotions. Okay, you're feeling sad. You're feeling down. Let's assess why you might be feeling sad, why you might feeling down. Sometimes there's trauma involved, or it just might be, do you know what? I just woke up with a bad day or
Yeah.
having a bad day. So it's hard to just put your finger on like this is what it is because you can bring 100 people in that are depressed and anxious, and you're going to handle them 100 different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that people frequently will try to do is they try to force all of the solutions into the same box, and it just doesn't happen that way. And I think that's one of the really neat things about seeing a therapist, seeing somebody who's licensed and can help you. Uh, First and foremost, is somebody who's neutral to the things that are going on around you. If I go to my wife, she's going to have a different lens than somebody who's completely neutral, right? And so I think it's a beautiful thing to say, I'm struggling, I need some help, and then to seek and find that help. Um, for those who have never been to therapy before, or not even been to your to Deseret counseling with you, Jimmy, what can they expect when they like? Let's say it's a first visit, and they finally got up the courage to make the call to say, "Hey, I need to come get some help." What can they expect when they come in to that first session? What's going to happen?
You're going to get a 100% non-judgmental greeting. So a lot of people, they feel like they're going to be judged, like, oh no, what are they going to think of me? It's 100% judgment free. And some people are just ready to talk about why they are there. And so when that individual just ready to talk, we're seeing why they're there, what they want to work on. But other individuals, it's honestly, it could take 2 or 3 sessions before you even start wondering why they're there because it's
Yeah,
hard for them to be there. It's hard for them to express their emotions, express their feeling. If they're there for their spouse, if they're for their child, they might think they're being a bad mom or a bad dad or a bad husband or a bad wife because they think they might be talking bad about them, so they have that
mhm.
guilt and shame already.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a get to know you type session, the first 2 sessions, kind of so you can build that rapport and then start building off after that. But I always let people know it's 100%, judgment free.
Yeah, I love that because I'm assuming there are people that come in who do feel that shame when they come in, or maybe they're super scared to even come in and ask for that help. How do you help kind of pull them through that initial barrier of maybe feeling scared or nervous or ashamed that they're there? How do you help kind of coax that through, and how can people better be prepared when they do get counseling for that first go round?
But now I can only speak on my behalf on
Of
how
course.
I do it. Honestly, when you come into our first session, we're having a conversation just like this. I'm actually asking questions, most likely without you realizing I'm asking questions. And so it's a laid back, just get to know you. Okay, where are you from? Do you know if you have that relation? You'd be like, oh, do you know what? I grew up in the country too, or I like this team too. And just get to know them. It's like, so family, you get along with your family, get along with mom and dad, your wife, how long you guys been married? That's awesome. Where'd you get married at? Is just gaining that trust and also that relationship because you want to be able to connect with them also. You just
Yeah.
don't want to be like, so why are you here? And you're just looking down, jotting notes down the whole time. You're not making any of that eye contact.
Yeah.
So when they first come into mind, we're just having a conversation just like this. I don't want to make it feel like an interview process. I want you to feel like, do you know what? This dude's pretty cool. I just want to be able just to talk with him and the issues I have, just bring it up with him, not have to worry about what he's thinking about me.
Yeah, I love that. That actually kind of dovetails into something else I was going to ask because I know when I've gone to therapy, I vividly remember a couple of times I've been to therapy. I went in with my walls up, and the moment that I decided to become vulnerable, that's when I started to see personal growth. That's when I started to see breakthroughs happening, and me finding the past traumas in my life to say, oh, that's what I need to fix. That's what I need to address to make myself feel better about myself, about life, about everything really about my process. What role for you, Jimmy, does of course people come in and you have to get them comfortable and connect with them a little bit, but kind of after that initial pull of getting them through that, what role does vulnerability play in people's healing process?
It plays a lot because when you're vulnerable is when you're real.
Mm,
And when you're real is when you can start working on things. It's the people that aren't vulnerable, like I can get this through this myself, or I'll take into consideration. I'll work on a couple things. Are the ones that are going to be long-term clients that they just don't want to work as fast as they could. I mean, everyone goes at their own speed, but when you're vulnerable, you're I shouldn't say you're weak. that's a bad word, but you're more aware to what's going on. Those emotions are more connected.
Yeah. How do you help people feel safe in that environment? Because I anticipate that as soon as you become vulnerable, and I've seen it in my own life, as soon as I become vulnerable, I guess I can say, um, that's when really raw stuff comes out, right? That's when you start to get into some of those past traumas, and maybe you don't feel safe, or maybe you feel embarrassed or ashamed, depending upon what those are. How do you help people understand that it's okay, right? It's okay to feel those feelings, and matter of fact, it's healthy to feel those feelings because that's how we're going to begin to make yourself whole.
Well, when you're vulnerable, say someone ends up crying, I always let
Yeah,
them know, and they're
I'm a crybaby. I'm a crier.
well, and I always let them know sometimes that's a reset for the body. The body needs to just express those emotions. They're out, and now it's a good reset. And if I know they're that macho man, and they don't want anyone to show that they've been crying, or even maybe with women that I had in my office, like, hey, my kids can't see that I've been crying in here. We we take it 5 minutes, end a little bit 5 minutes early, let them gather themselves, just kind of talk about things so their emotions go down a little bit, the eyes aren't so red, but we just let them, you're okay. I mean, it's good to cry if you need to. And my
Yeah.
wife might say she's never seen me cry, but it is good if you cry.
It is. It's there's for whatever reason, there's a lot of healing for me anyway. Like I said, I'm a crybaby anyway. There's always a lot of healing that happens when I seem to let those tears spill over and become vulnerable and really just kind of connect with my feelings. I think I've noticed in the past when I've been the most closed off, uh, I'm a hard person to be around, very hard, and I know that that's when I need to seek help and find help to work through those things. Um,
Well, I mean, think about the emotions when you're holding things in compared to when you let things out in a
yeah,
healthy manner. If you're holding in the emotions, you are more edgy, you're more irritated, you don't want to be around people, and people 100% don't want to be around you. But when you cry, or you not even cry, you just let those emotions out, and you're vulnerable again, it sometimes is a reset button where it's like, okay, that infection got out. It's time for me just to kind of start all over.
yeah, and I love that. I agree with that analogy of saying the infection. I've noticed that when I've gone to therapy, when I play all in, that's when I find the healing that I'm looking
Hmm.
for. And I always equate that to going and like if you have a cut, right, a very physical cut, scrape yourself, whatever. It can become infected, and the object is to go all the way down and clear the infection out so that it can heal. And I use that kind of analogy with therapy. If people go in and they never get to the bottom of that cut, they never get everything cleaned out. You're never going to fully heal properly. And you can be in therapy for a long time. I always tease Jimmy just a little bit that he has a job where he's literally trying to like dry his client base up because he wants them to become whole and to move on, right? Like you want to eventually stop seeing them.
Oh,
And I
it's a favorite thing I say to my clients. I always say, "Do you know what? I hope I never see you again. But if I do, my door is always open. If I do, I hope it's out in the community."
yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things that my recommendation to people who, just from my experience, if you're going to go and receive therapy and receive help for anxiety or depression or whatever you're dealing with, go all in, play all the way, be vulnerable, go in and clear all the grossness out, clean the cut out, and begin to heal naturally and properly and take the right steps to become whole. It is worth it. I promise you. Jimmy,
Well,
that,
really quick, Casey, think
yeah,
about when you go to the doctor. I mean, when you go to the doctor, he asks what's wrong. You don't sugarcoat it.
yeah,
You're not like, I don't know, my foot hurts when it's your throat that hurts.
yeah.
So if we don't do that with our own physical health, why would we do that with our mental health?
Yeah, and I anticipate anyway around. I think there's always times where you go to your doctor and you're like, and I actually use the analogy of a dentist, right? Because I go in there, I'm not a great flosser. I'll go to the dentist. They're like, "Are you flossing?" I'm like, "Yep," and they're like, "You're a liar." I can
Your
tell within
gums are
two
bleeding
seconds
like
you're,
no
yeah,
other.
I can tell within 2 seconds you're lying, right? And I would anticipate that your therapist is very much the same way, right? Eventually, once you build that relationship, they'll be like, "You doing okay? Great," and you're like, "No, you're not." Right? Let me just
Yep.
call you out on the carpet right now because you're not okay.
I actually did that with a client 2 weeks ago.
That's hilarious.
I'm like, how was your week? She's like, I was good. And then as we started talking, 10 minutes into the session, I'm like, wait. this went on through the week and you said your week was good. Kind of call bull crap on that one.
Why do you think people do that? Why do you think people feel the necessity to fib and not be honest, especially in this setting?
I don't think well, one, it's a natural response, I think.
Fair enough.
I was like, hey, how are you doing? Good. Because do most people really want to know how someone's doing? It's just that common things. Like when someone passes away, is there anything we can do? No, we're fine.
Yeah.
In reality, there is things that you can do.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just a natural thing that we say. But once you're in that moment and you're like, no, I can tell something's going on. What's up? And they realize you really care, most people are going to express what's really affecting them if you have that relationship with them.
Yeah, and I'm super intrigued by that because especially in our culture, it is, how you doing? I'm fine. Can you do anything
Mhm.
now? We're doing good, right? That's our immediate go-to. On the off chance somebody actually says, I'm not okay. Like I have a dear friend who I'll text him fairly frequently. I'm like, just checking in on you, how you doing? Because I know that sometimes he has some mental health issues and concerns. And I think sometimes we're afraid to ask, how are you doing? I think we're afraid to call bullcrap because we don't know the steps to help. What without getting obviously, we don't have all of the tools or all of the time to help. But as somebody who cares about human beings in general, what are a couple of things that we can do? Because I think this is part of building like awareness and alleviating the stigma behind mental health. What are some things that we can do to help when somebody says, I'm actually not okay?
My favorite thing is, okay, what's going on? It's an open-ended question. They
Yeah,
have the opportunity to respond or not. They say, I don't know, it's just been a hard week. Okay, what went on this week? Let them lead the conversation. But I always say, okay, what's going on? It leaves it open for them
yeah,
to say what's going on. And I think as us, as individuals, when we ask, hey, how are you? We need to be open that not everyone is doing well. And if they happen to say, I'm not doing well, be ready to respond. Because often it's like, I'm not doing well. It's like we're stuck, like, well, this script didn't go this way.
yeah. That was not part of my script. I better jump to page 12 to see what I'm supposed to do.
And then we feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And so I think just being open, like, hey, not everyone's going to do okay. So if someone says, I'm not doing well, be able to respond, okay, what's going on? How can I help?
yeah. Yeah. So thing number one you can do, guys, after you ask the question, they're like, I'm not okay. Ask more questions. See if you can help open and kind of peel back some of those layers of the onion and say, okay, what's going on? What happened? Like what happened throughout the week, right? That's one step, right? That's one avenue. Is there power, Jimmy, in saying, okay, great, I'm coming to get you. We're gonna go get a drink and
Oh,
getting them out of their
100%.
situation for a second and being around somebody who maybe isn't necessarily in the weeds with them. Right? I said earlier that when my spouse is trying to help me problem solve, sometimes I will say a lot. I'm like, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works, right? Especially if we're talking about a job thing, and she's like, "Why don't you go do this? Why don't you go do that?" And I have to try to explain that's not the way it works. Yada yada yada. What is there power in kind of uniting physically around that person?
What do you mean by that?
Meaning like going to get them to get a drink, taking them out to dinner, getting them out of their
Okay.
situation or their current physical spot to help them open up a little bit.
Oh, 100%. One of the number one things I talk to my clients is, do you know what, when you're feeling stuck, when you're feeling down, change the scenery up a little bit.
Ooh, I like
Because
that.
when we're sitting there, that's when those flood of emotions are coming in. And I tell them, we're no different than a 2-year-old or 3-year-old throwing a fit. If a 2-year-old, 3-year-old's throwing a fit, say it's in the kitchen, you can't reason with them. But if you remove them from the situation, if you put them on the stairs, you put them on the couch, whatever it might be, and be like, do you know what? Go sit on your bed, 3 5 minutes. I'll be up there, see how you're doing. What if you remove them from the situation and then you go talk to them? Yes, they're still a little emotionally upset, but they're still able to talk to you a little bit because you remove them from that situation. Us humans, us adults, we're no different than a little child, but sometimes we forget that we are.
Yeah. So a pattern interrupt. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Oh, it's 100%. I mean, you think about just being in one room all day. I mean, even when
Yeah.
we're sick, we're sick, healthy, we're like physically we're not feeling well. After a day in bed, we're like, I got to get up and move around.
Yeah.
Even if
Yes.
it's going downstairs to just to get like a bowl of cereal, whatever it might be, we our bodies don't like sitting still. But we throw the mental health upon that. That's where it starts toying with us.
Yeah.
And get out, move, change the scenery. There's something about stimulation. I would say so, from Spanish Fork or from Santaquin to Beaver, there's hardly anything.
So ugly.
And that's where
Sorry
it
to
just
live
gets
there.
very tiring. You're tired, like this is such a long drive. But as soon as you hit Cedar City,
Yeah.
from Beaver to Cedar City, you're awake. You're looking around, seeing what's going on because you got buildings, you got stimulation going.
Yeah.
And then that 45-minute drive from Cedar City to St. George doesn't seem so bad because you have that stimulation, that mind is going. And it's no
That's right.
different when we're down, get up, go for a walk. There's stimulation does a ton of work.
Yeah. I love that. What is one thing you wish people understood about folks who are dealing with anxiety or depression? Because there are some people who just don't understand. What's one thing you wish that people knew about people struggling with that?
Everyone's gone through it. They're not alone. Um, it might be different degrees of anxiety, depression, but realize there's millions, if not billions, of people that have been anxious or depressed sometime in their life. And when you know you're not the only person on the planet that's gone through that, or even your neighbor,
Yeah.
it kind of gives you comfort realizing, okay, I I don't have to do this by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think regardless if you have had to seek help for it or not, I think everybody's had bouts of anxiety or depression. I think it's how you're able to deal with it. Some people are really good at coping with it. Other people need some assistance, and I think that's the kicker. I know as a male, well, I shouldn't even say that. I know that I am somebody who's proud. And I think when you're proud, it's harder to say, I actually need help. I'm a step past something I can handle on my own. And so I think we need to normalize saying, asking for help doesn't make us weak. And I think that's what a lot of people still have a stigma about asking for help is that we're weak. And that's not the case at all. And I
Oh,
don't know how to oh go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just don't know how to people understand that you're not broken. If you can't figure something out all by yourself, you're not broken. Not even a little bit.
What do we do with our cars? If we can't figure out how to repair a car, we're asking someone to help. It might be, you as a neighbor, it might be the mechanic. We're asking somebody. Same
Yeah.
thing with physical health. If we not sure what's going on physically, we've been sick for a week, 2 weeks, we're going to ask, okay, what's going on? I've tried all these remedies. I'm still feeling sick. What else is it? We're going to professionals. Same thing with our mental health. I think a lot of times we feel like if people can't see it, then I don't need to address it.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's real. Talk to a professional. Just get out and let someone help. I hate the word diagnose, but kind of show you what's going on to help you get through it.
Yeah. I think more than ever in the society that we live in, we see a lot of people burn out. Sometimes we might have even said, I'm burnt out. How do we know the difference between being burnt out in a short term versus potentially having like some mental illness or mental health issues that we need to get taken care of? Any thoughts on that, Jimmy? How can we tell the difference between just a really rough week and we're burned out versus mental health situations?
So I mean, say like with depression, I always ask people, okay, in this 14 days that you've had, the last 2 weeks, let's reflect back. How many of those days do you feel like you were down or depressed?
Mm,
If there's 7, 9 days of it, I'm like, okay, we're having more than just a couple down days.
yeah,
And then I like to have them reflect back throughout the weeks. Okay, what did you do throughout these weeks? Because sometimes I should say, when you're feeling down for a day, it feels like weeks. And I always look at, okay, those down days, are they interfering long term with your relationships, with work, with family life? Is it interfering with life in general? If it's, yeah, it is, and it's been going on for a while, that's more than just having a couple down days. Because me, normal down days, like I'm down a day or two, then I'm back at it, everything's fine. If it goes on more than that and it's interfering with life, that's where you need to look more into things.
Yeah. What are some ways that people, like, if I'm not sure, are there some steps that I can take if I'm like, I don't know if this is burnout or if it's a mental health thing? Are there some immediate steps I can take to say, yes, like, okay, I'm going to do this for a day or two, see if I put myself out? Like, should I be exercising? Should I go for a walk? Like, should I be talking to somebody? Are there steps I can take before I pick up that phone and say, I need help?
I think journaling is an awesome thing
Okay.
already. I'm horrible at it, but I think journaling is an awesome thing because you can go back throughout your journal and review how your month was, how your weeks were. And then you'd be like, all right, do you know what? Last week I went to watch my boy play football, had a blast, and you can realize it was a good day. The next day, went out with family, it was great. So you can review your past weeks and realize, okay, do you know what? Actually was good weeks.
Yeah.
And then down days, ending with depression, I'm a big believer, just get out and do something.
Yeah.
Exercising is a natural antidepressant as it is. Get out, get that body moving, and socialize. Because when you're with other people, when you're constantly moving, you're not thinking about it as much.
Yeah. Agreed. Um, what advice would you give somebody listening right now who's silently struggling?
Same thing, you're not alone. Talk to somebody. Sometimes talking to somebody is like we talked about earlier is having a good cry. When you express it and you talk to somebody, there's that release valve that just opened, and make sure it's somebody that you can trust. So
Yeah,
if you don't trust them, don't open up to them. But if it's a neighbor, if it's a partner, if it's a therapist, just express to somebody what you're going through.
yeah,
Because if you don't, we go back to the physical part. Sometimes it could be that infection. It's just growing and growing and growing. And sometimes your antibiotic is, I just got to talk to someone about this just to let them know where I'm at.
yeah. And I would recommend everybody to find some friends, find somebody who is a true confidant. And if you're married and you're listening, or have a partner and you're listening, respect when your spouse says, "I can't tell you something that's not for me to say." So my wife is a vault. If you're lucky enough to have my wife as a friend and you tell her something in confidence, she will not even tell me. But on the flip side, I don't push her because that's not for me to know.
Hmm.
Find yourself a friend like that where you say, you can't, please don't tell anybody this. And no, it's not going to go anywhere. If somebody says that to my wife, I don't find out. I don't. Oh, there's a special effect. I don't find out, which is amazing to me because I know that there are people like that in my life that I have also. That if I say this is in confidence, it's going to stay in confidence. So you don't have to worry about Tom, Dick, or Harry down the road finding out about Casey did because your buddy's a vault. They're going to keep it locked down. And so I same as you, Jimmy. I recommend finding one or two people in your life that you can really just have a true confidant with and make sure that there's somebody that yeah will safeguard your secrets and your really not secrets, that's a bad word for me, but vulnerabilities, and the closest things that you hold dear and that you're struggling with. um,
Well, all I can
I
say with my wife, I'm not the most express your emotion type person. I mean, which is weird because I'm a therapist, but
right,
it's only been the last couple years with my wife where I'll be like, yeah, I'm having a crappy day.
yeah.
And she's like, what, why? I'm like, I don't know. But just saying those little things, it's like, all right, she knows about it. Now I can move on.
Well, and what I love about that is that actually sets expectations. I've been very open with my wife about that too. Like, matter of fact, when I came home today, I'm like, this is how I'm feeling, right? Like today was a weird Thursday for me, and I came home and I was in a bit of a funk, and which is particularly tricky when you have to get on a podcast, and even more tricky when you're going to get on and talk about mental health, right? Like that's stacking up and stacking up and stacking up, and I'm like, how am I going to get on and have a meaningful conversation about getting help and advocating for that? And I thought probably perfect day for it, right? Because I am having a tough time. I talk to my wife. I'm talking to my good friend Jimmy. I'm having a pattern interrupt that's making me feel better and giving me a shot of endorphins because I'm out doing something different. We're doing a podcast that literally we're doing so that we can change the lives of other people. So that other people can go, oh my gosh, I have resources. Oh my gosh, I'm building a community, a network. People can join us on social media every day, and we're putting good stuff out into the world. I go to bed at night fantastic because I know that I'm giving education, information, and something to motivate somebody to do better or be better. And that for me is actually really, really fun and really, really kind of a cool calling that I think you and I have at this point in the ballgame.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. Um, I talked a little bit about this. You're in a profession where you're actively trying to kick people out. You hope that you see them, but in public, right? And you hope you get to give
Correct.
them a handshake or a hug or whatever it is that therapists do, probably depending upon how close you are with your client. But what ultimately does mental health success look like?
Oh, that's $1 million question. I think it depends on that individual.
I agree.
I think it's just bettering yourself every day. Working on yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, just bettering yourself every day as a person and as an individual. But man, that's a tough question. Like,
Well, and I set you up a little bit because I agree with you. I believe that's a moving target. Mental health success is going to be different for everybody, and I think what you're going to see is a line like you frequently see in businesses, right? You're not going to see what you want to see is you're going to have ups and downs, but you want to have ups and downs that end up going up in the long run, right? And so I think every single day as you get better, as you're able to overcome a trauma, as you're able to uh, begin to habit stack, right? There's a term, I don't know if people are familiar with it. I don't know if it came out of the book Atomic Habits. That's where I read about it. But it's called habit stacking. And what that ultimately looks like is people set these goals, right? And you think, I'm going to go from like this spot to this spot without taking these steps in the middle. And habit stacking is saying, okay, Jimmy and I, and this is no lie, Jimmy and I are up at 3:30 so we can be to the gym by 4. Right? Every day when we go to the gym, Jimmy's got his set of things that he does. We don't work out together, by the way. Jimmy takes his son, who, how old's Denver?
12.
12. Jimmy's 12-year-old willingly gets up and gets really frustrated when he can't go to the gym at 4 a.m. And no lie, I watched this kid walk into Vossi the other day without his membership, and the people at the front desk were like, "Hey, Denver," and he just
Yeah,
walked
he
right
doesn't even
on
have to
in.
scan in.
Doesn't even scan in. That's beside the point. But that this habit stacking I'm talking about for Jimmy and I, for example, for I go in and I take a clipboard with me, and every day I write down what I did, and so like I have week over week progress of what's happening. Now, when I start a particular circuit of weights that like I do 6 week increments, my week 1 and my week 6 always look drastically different. Always, my beginning weight and my end weight are different. That's because every week I have a habit of adding more reps or more weights every single time. And you can do that with every aspect of your life, right? It's simple things like, hey, if you're consistently late for work and that causes you stress, set a goal to leave a little bit earlier,
Yep.
right? And then before that, right, set a goal to lay your clothes out. And then before that, set a goal to like get your toothbrush ready or whatever. That like begin to habit stack those things. So at the end of like your goal period, you are a completely different human being than you were before. And so I think when you talk about mental health and success, what that looks like is a moving target for anybody. But the goal is be better like today than you were yesterday. Be 1% better.
And I think one thing that you really hit on the head was just, writing things down go a long ways too. And so even with our mental health, it's like, hey, do you know what? These are the things I want to do to work on my mental health. Write them down.
Yeah.
I tell my clients all the things like thoughts are awesome, but they mean crap unless you do something.
Yeah. You've got to take action.
Yep. And so you want to make your mental health better, write down what you want to do to make it better, and then put steps in between. So kind of like the same thing with the Atomic Habits is, if I don't want to pick up my phone every single morning when I wake up, let's put it away. Let's put
Yeah.
it farther away so I don't have to get it. And then record your steps when you do it.
Yeah, yeah. I Mel Robbins, who's a pretty famous author and podcaster. She's on record very much saying like she is crippled by her phone. If she has it like on her nightstand, she will like default to that thing. She will look at it first thing when she wakes up. She will look at it last thing before she goes to bed. So she has to physically put that in another room so that in the morning she like that's not the first thing she does. She has to go turn her alarm off, right, which gets her out of bed to start her day. but then she has a routine set in place to habit stack and not be sucked into a phone right away, right? Which I actually think leads to a whole other set of like mental health problems, because that is like something that we use every day to compare our worst to somebody else's best,
Yep.
right? Like that's what social media is. And I hope people understand that. You can get on there at any given day and see people saying, oh my gosh, I made this much money, or they might have a beautiful house. Like I actually found myself looking at an influencer the other day, and this person was like, had a massive house, and they had a massive thing, like they had like a massive following and a massive house, and they had like, anyway, I just found myself getting sucked into it, and I was like, wait a minute. Like I am comparing, like I was having a bad day, so I'm like, I did just that. I compared my worst to their best, and I thought that is not fair. And we get into the game of comparison, we're in big trouble.
But we don't see behind the scenes of someone else's life either.
Yep. Yeah. That's we'll wrap it up here in just a second, Jimmy. And I'm not even going to ask you for a mental health moment because we spent the last 45 minutes talking about mental health. But I do want to talk about this briefly, and I want your thoughts on what happens in the comparison game. How do we avoid it? Well, first off, what does it do when we're in a comparison game? And then how do we avoid getting sucked into that?
Do you, okay, I'm going to take this two different ways. It's like, why are you comparing? So, say with this influencer that you saw, where like they have the big house, the fancy car, things like that, you can compare and say, man, that is awesome. I wish I want to be there one day.
Yeah.
And look as a healthy part, like, okay, and get to know their strategy, kind of go to the atomic habit. Doesn't mean you're going to get there, but like, okay, what can I do to get to this person? But then you got the negative part where it's like, man, I am crap. This person has this, 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 this. I try my little Hyundai hybrid and my two-car garage, whatever, one-car garage, whatever it might be, and just realizing, do you know what? We don't know what's going on. That person we're comparing ourselves to, we don't know what's going on in their lives.
Yeah.
They struggle just as much as us.
Yeah.
What and maybe this me being a therapist is one thing I've learned is I've had multi millionaires in my office, and some famous people also,
Who is
that
it?
are
Just
very
kidding. I
well
know you
known.
can't.
His name is Casey Green.
Oh,
But then I've had people, who could barely afford, a bus pass.
yeah.
And things that are in common is they both had struggles in their life. And so I think to not go down the comparing lane, I'm probably getting off sidetrack, not to go down the comparing lane is just focus on what you can control. Realize, do you know what? That's awesome that they have that, or I can just focus on what I can control. What's ever going on in their life, that's on them.
Yeah.
Because in the long run, I can only do what I can do, and if I can't do it, so be it.
Yeah, and I think we have to be very conscious of that. I remember I used to work for someone who was my same age. Matter of fact, well, they may have been like 6 months older, practically my same age. This particular person had hundreds of millions. I don't know, a lot of money, and I found it really difficult to be like, man, they are my same age. Like, well, I have not done jack squat. But the more I got to know this person, the more I understood that, like, because he had kids that were very similar in age to my kids, he's still a person. They're going through family struggles. Their children had some very serious mental health issues. Um, you just never know what's going on behind the scenes. And sure, maybe they got fortunate in some regard to have a particular system or a particular product that works really, really well. That's always going to happen. There's always going to be people who do things really, really well. And sometimes people get really, really lucky. But underneath all of it, this was someone who had struggles. He was a human being. First and foremost, it was a family guy, right? And he loved his family, but had some serious struggles as well. And so I think as a human race as a whole, we need to give people a lot more leniency, and we have to be a lot kinder to people, and we have to be kinder to ourselves because we don't get to know everybody else's story. We get to see glimpses of it. Sometimes we get to see chapters of it, but we don't get to see the whole book. And so it's not fair for us to judge our chapter against somebody else's book. It's not fair for us to judge one of our battles against their war, right? It's not fair to do those things. And I think the more the more that we can worry about ourselves, the happier we'll be. Um, I found out I struggled early on in my career with thinking that if there was a meeting happening, that they were talking about me, right? And eventually I realized that like, hey, the world doesn't revolve around me. But frequently we think people are talking about us, thinking about us when they're not. And I think that creates a lot of issues for people too. And so I think we need to just give everybody a little more grace.
A lot of the times too, when we're mad at someone, especially if it's someone that we're not even maybe a big acquaintance with, is they're not even thinking about why we're mad. They're out having fun, and here we are stewing about something that they're not even aware of.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Lonnie, I see you. Hello, Lonnie. Hope you're doing really well. One of the really cool things that I'm just going to actually speak to this just a little bit, Jimmy, is there a variety of ways in which you can find help? Um, First and foremost, you can see counseling. That's always great. I know that Lonnie and his wife do some personal coaching with the gal, and that's worked really really well for them. And so I don't want to necessarily say that like, hey, listen, mental health. If you have mental health struggles or issues, that like you have to go the therapy route because there are a variety of things you can do that will help boost your mental health. Right? We just want to make sure that you're getting the right type of help. If you're seeing somebody, and I think this is important too, Jimmy, for people to know, what do you do if somebody, and this actually happened recently in my own family, what do you do if you're seeing a therapist and you don't connect with that person?
Do you know what? Tell them you don't connect.
Guys,
And
you can change.
you can 100%. I tell my therapist every staff meeting what I try to is like, do you know, after 3 or 4 sessions, ask the client how they're doing. You
Yeah,
know, if they're getting anything from it. Because you could be the smartest person, greatest person in the world, and if you're not connecting, it's not going to help. And
yeah,
just because I could have 10 clients seeing a therapist, nine might connect, and the other one might not. And we're big boys, big girls. I always say, do you know what? Let us know,
yeah,
call us, and we'll just get you in with a different therapist. And if no one in our clinic works, then do you know what? We'll find another one for you.
yeah. Yeah, though that with as many therapists as you have, Jimmy, and you also have telehealth options, by the way. Jimmy has telehealth options. So, guys, it's not always even like you have to go to an actual office. Some people enjoy that. Some people just want to dial up Zoom or whatever you use and like chat with somebody online, and that's good enough. There are a variety of ways to get help, guys. There is no reason not to get help. So please make sure that whether it's with Jimmy with Deseret Counseling or anybody in your local area, please reach out and get help. This is far too important for us to ignore. It's an epidemic that's sweeping the nation of people being mentally ill where they don't need to be. When there's help available for people, we're dealing with massive amounts of suicide, as we mentioned earlier. That has to end. It has
And
to end.
And here's the thing is if you do feel like you're at that point, there's the national hotline, dial 988. You have the crisis line that you can always call. Utah has an app, it's called Safe Utah app. You can get on it, you can live chat with therapists. You can also text the number it is let's see, sorry. Pull it up real quick. So 741741. You can text that number. And there's a trained crisis counselor that you can just text at any time. And then if you need to, go to the hospital.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of with technology nowadays. Call or text 988 and someone's there to help you through it. And
Yeah.
that's the national hotline too.
And I love that. I think that's a perfect way to end. I would end, and Jimmy, I'll come to you for some closing statements as you're the professional in this arena. But my plea would be, guys, we need you. There is so many good things to offer. Please get help if you're feeling down, if you're feeling blue, and it's lasted longer than a couple of days. Talk to a friend, talk to a therapist, work on yourself. Make the rest of 2025 the year that you take control of your life and that you find the therapist, you find the connection that you need to become whole. Start to work on yourself. Understand that it's going to be a grind, but it's a grind worth making. We need you. I've seen far too many people be affected by suicides, by things that were preventable. They just needed somebody to care about them. Check in on your friends, care about yourself, get the help you need, and do so without fear of judgment. It's a judgment free zone. People are there to take care of you. Jimmy, I'm going to send it to you to close up, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I kind of go along with that. Do you know, sometimes we feel like to talk to a therapist, there needs to be something major going on in our life. It's like our cars. Sometimes you just need a tune up, go in, get a little tune up. I have clients who I seen 3 or 4 years ago. They've called me up. They're like, "Hey, Jimmy, can I get my tune up?" They come in for 1 or 2 sessions and they're good.
Yeah,
And lastly, I would say, do you know, if you're feeling down, there's some things I like to look at. It's like, and there's the simple things. They might sound dumb, but okay, if you're anxious, upset, when was the last time I ate? How much sleep am I getting? And what in my routine has changed?
yeah,
Sometimes it's like, do you know what? I've gone to the gym for 5 straight days, but these last 2 days I've missed, it just feels off. You know, there's a change in you, a change in that week, and sometimes it's just a little thing. You're like, okay, I haven't eaten in 4 days or 4 days, 4 hours, so I might be a little bit more on edge
yeah.
than I normally am. So I just kind of look at your surroundings, see what's changed during the day, and usually sometimes it's just a little fix.
Yeah. Hey, Jimmy, if people want to get a hold of you, if they want some help from you or from Desert Counseling, how do they get a hold of you?
They can go to our website, deseretcounseling.com. There's a contact section that they can send it, all their contact information. We'll reach out to them. Also has the phone number, which is 801-875-2892. That number you can call or text, and someone gets back to you really quick.
Yeah, guys, and you can also reach out to me. You can DM him on social media. It's at
Yep.
Deseret Counseling, and obviously a lot of people on social media. Sometimes it's easier to ping that way, but there's a variety of ways you can get a hold of Jimmy. Make sure you do so. Jimmy, thank you for dropping knowledge for the last almost hour now. I guess about an hour on mental health and how we can become just a little bit better each and every day. Guys, we love you. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
Awesome. See you guys.